Picture this. You wake up to an alarm clock, rush through breakfast, commute through traffic, sit at a desk for 8 hours, commute back home, eat dinner, watch a little television, and collapse into bed. Then you do it all over again. 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year, for 40 years or more. We call this normal life. But what if I told you this system was deliberately designed, and its origins might surprise you? The 9-to-5 workday is so ingrained in our culture that we rarely question it. It feels like it's always existed, like some natural law of human existence. But the truth is, this rigid structure is relatively new in human history. For thousands of years, people worked according to the seasons, the weather, and their immediate needs. Farmers worked intensely during harvest, then rested during winter. Craftsmen controlled their own schedules. So when did everything change? The answer takes us back to the early 20th century, to a man named Henry Ford. In 1914, Ford made a revolutionary announcement. He would pay his workers $5 a day and reduce their work schedule to 8 hours. The world was stunned. Other industrialists called him a madman. Workers celebrated in the streets. But here's what most people don't know. Ford wasn't being generous. He was being brilliant. Before this change, Ford's factories had a massive problem. Worker turnover was nearly 400% annually. Think about that. He had to hire 4 workers for every position just to keep one throughout the year. Training costs were astronomical. Productivity was terrible. Ford realized something that other factory owners hadn't grasped yet. If he wanted to mass-produce automobiles, he needed a mass market to buy them. His own workers, scraping by on poverty wages and working themselves to death, couldn't afford the cars they were building. So Ford didn't create the 8-hour workday out of kindness. He created it to manufacture consumers. The $5 wage was enough for workers to actually buy a Model T. The 8-hour day left them enough energy to want one. Suddenly, factory workers weren't just producers. They were customers. Ford had cracked the code of modern capitalism. Pay people just enough to buy your products, but not enough to escape the system. Work them just little enough that they don't collapse, but not so little that they have time to think about alternative ways of living. Other industrialists watched Ford's profits soar and quickly copied his model. Within decades, the 8-hour workday spread across America, then across the developed world. Unions fought for it, governments legislated it, and it became the standard. Everyone praised it as a victory for workers' rights. And in many ways, it was. Compared to the brutal 14- and 16-hour days of early industrial capitalism, 8 hours seemed like paradise. But let's zoom out for a moment. 8 hours of work, 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours of free time. That's the promise, right? Except it's not really true. Add your commute. Add the time getting ready for work. Add the time decompressing from work. For most people, work doesn't consume 8 hours. It consumes 12, 14, sometimes 16 hours of their day when you account for everything work-related. And here's the really clever part. The system convinced us this was freedom. We're not slaves, after all. We can quit anytime we want. We choose our employers. But do we really have a choice? What happens if you stop participating in the 9-to-5 system? You lose your health insurance. You can't pay rent. You can't buy food. Society labels you lazy, irresponsible, a failure. The philosopher Rousseau once wrote that man is born free but everywhere is in chains. Modern society just made the chains more comfortable and called them careers. We're not forced to work at gunpoint. We're forced to work by the need to survive in an economy deliberately structured to make independent survival nearly impossible. Think about what happened to the commons, those shared lands where people could hunt, gather, and farm freely. Over centuries, they were enclosed, privatized, turned into someone else's property. The same thing happened to knowledge, to water, to seeds. Piece by piece, the ability to exist outside the employment system was dismantled. Today, even if you wanted to live off the land, you'd need to buy land first. And to buy land, you need money. And to get money, you need a job. The loop is closed. But wait, you might be thinking, hasn't technology made everything better? We have computers now, artificial intelligence, automation. Shouldn't we be working less than people did in 1914? The economist John Maynard Keynes certainly thought so. In 1930, he predicted that by the year 2000, technological advancement would reduce the workweek to just 15 hours. What happened? Technology did advance, exactly as Keynes predicted. Productivity skyrocketed. One worker today produces what would have taken 10 workers in 1930. But we're not working 15 hours a week. We're still working 40, 50, 60 hours or more. So where did all that extra productivity go? It went up. It concentrated at the top. CEO pay has increased over 1,000% since the 1970s, while average worker pay has barely budged when adjusted for inflation. We're producing more value than ever before, but we're seeing less of it. The fruits of technological progress are being harvested by a smaller and smaller group of people. And here's where it gets even more insidious. The system created an entire culture to support itself. We're taught from childhood that hard work is virtuous, that busyness is next to godliness, that our worth as human beings is tied to our productivity. We learn to introduce ourselves by our jobs. We define our identities by our careers. We feel guilty for resting, anxious when we're not productive. This isn't an accident. It's cultural engineering. A population that feels guilty for not working is a population that won't question why they're working so much in the first place. We've internalized the system so deeply that we've become our own overseers, cracking the whip on ourselves even when no boss is watching. Look at how we talk about time. We spend time, save time, waste time, invest time, kill time. Time became currency, something to be managed and optimized and squeezed for maximum productivity. When was the last time you just existed without thinking about whether you were using your time productively? The system also gave us just enough comfort to keep us compliant. Entertainment to distract us. Credit cards to create the illusion of wealth. Social media to provide the simulation of connection. We're exhausted from work, so we're too tired to organize, too drained to resist, too isolated to build alternatives. We collapse on the couch, scroll through our phones, and gear up to do it all again tomorrow. Consider the concept of retirement. We're told to work for 40 years, sacrifice our health and our time and our dreams, and then maybe, if we're lucky, we can enjoy life when we're 65. Assuming we're still healthy. Assuming we've saved enough. Assuming the pension system doesn't collapse. We've normalized the idea of deferring life itself. What about the environmental cost? The 9-to-5 system requires massive infrastructure. Millions of cars commuting simultaneously. Office buildings consuming energy. Resources extracted and consumed at ever-increasing rates. Also, people can sit in cubicles doing tasks that could often be done remotely, or sometimes don't need to be done at all. The pandemic revealed something interesting. When offices shut down and people worked from home, many discovered they could do their jobs in a fraction of the time. Without commutes, without meetings, without office politics, tasks that seemed to require 8 hours suddenly took 3. But instead of acknowledging this and reducing work hours, companies are now desperate to get everyone back in the office. Why? Because the system isn't really about productivity. It's about control. An employee at home is harder to monitor, harder to control, harder to keep locked into the rhythm of corporate life. The office serves a psychological function. It reinforces hierarchy. It maintains the illusion that presence equals productivity. It keeps people embedded in a culture that normalizes overwork. Now, some of you might be thinking this sounds like a conspiracy theory. But it's not a conspiracy. It's a system. No group of people sat in a room and deliberately designed all of this. Instead, it emerged organically from capitalism's internal logic. Those who controlled capital needed labor. They structured employment to maximize their benefit. Over time, the system stabilized into what we have now. The result is a kind of soft authoritarianism. You're free to choose your master, but you're not free to have no master at all. You can pick which company to work for, but you can't choose not to participate in wage labor without facing severe consequences. It's freedom within a cage, choice within constraints so tight they might as well be chains. And the system is self-reinforcing. People who succeed within it naturally defend it. If you've spent 20 years climbing the corporate ladder, admitting the ladder leads nowhere is psychologically devastating. So instead, you tell yourself it was worth it. You tell yourself the system is fair, and anyone who fails simply didn't try hard enough. This is why challenging the 9-to-5 system feels so radical, so uncomfortable. We're not just questioning a work schedule. We're questioning our entire social structure, our values, our identities. That's terrifying. It's easier to believe the system is fine and you just need to work harder. But here's what gives me hope. More and more people are waking up. The rise of movements questioning traditional work, the growing interest in financial independence, the increasing number of people choosing alternative lifestyles. Young people especially are looking at the deal being offered and saying no. That's not enough. That's not life. Technology might be the thing that finally breaks the system. Not because it makes us more productive, but because it makes the absurdity more visible. When you can do your job in 3 hours but have to pretend to work for 8, the charade becomes obvious. When you sit in pointless meetings that could have been emails, you start questioning what you're really doing with your life. The pandemic accelerated this awakening. Millions of people suddenly had time to think, time to reassess, time to realize they hated their jobs and their commutes and the entire structure of their lives. The Great Resignation wasn't people being lazy. It was people refusing to return to a system they finally recognized as broken. So what's the alternative? That's the question everyone asks. And the truth is, there isn't one alternative. There are thousands. Some people are building cooperative businesses owned by workers. Some are creating intentional communities that share resources. Some are developing technologies for sustainable living. Some are fighting for universal basic income. Some are simply choosing to live more simply, work less, consume less, exist more. The point isn't that everyone needs to drop out and live in the woods. The point is that we need to recognize the 9-to-5 system for what it is. A historical artifact. A structure created to serve specific economic interests. Not a natural law. Not the only way to organize human labor. Not the definition of a meaningful life. We have more wealth, more technology, more productive capacity than any society in human history. The fact that people are still working themselves to death, still struggling to afford basic necessities, still sacrificing their lives to jobs they hate, isn't a resource problem. It's a distribution problem. The system wasn't designed for your happiness. It wasn't designed for your flourishing. It was designed to extract maximum value from your labor while giving you just enough to keep you participating. Understanding this doesn't mean you have to quit your job tomorrow. But it does mean you can stop feeling like there's something wrong with you for feeling trapped. You're not broken. The system is. You're not lazy for wanting more from life than endless work. You're human. And recognizing that is the first step toward imagining something different. The 9-to-5 system has only existed for about a century. Humans have been around for hundreds of thousands of years. We've organized our labor in countless ways throughout history. This current system isn't the end of history. It's just another chapter. And chapters end. The question isn't whether the system will change. Everything changes eventually. The question is whether we'll actively shape what comes next, or passively accept whatever emerges. So the next time your alarm goes off and you drag yourself out of bed to start another week of the same routine, just remember. This isn't freedom. This isn't normal. This isn't how things have to be. It's just how things are right now. And right now doesn't last forever.